Graphics cards. The Elite XG270QG from ViewSonic breaks the traditional ugly appearance of gaming monitors by providing an ultra-clean design while still delivering gamers the features that they want most. Features like a 1 millisecond response time, IPS 165Hz overclock display, black brushed aluminum stand with tilt and swivel, mouse and keyboard cable anchors, and customizable subtle lighting. To learn more about the XG270GQ from ViewSonic and to see current pricing, click the link in the description below. All right, so we got some things to talk about here. 5600 XT has now basically hit the market, if you can't tell as of your sub boxes this morning. January 21st is technically the launch day. I don't know if they're gonna be on shelves as we speak, but we've got a new competition taking place between the $279 to $300 price point. A price point that was kind of left alone for a little bit. The only things that got up there were the custom 1660 Ti's, which was okay because it was still cheaper than the cheapest 2060s that you could find. But at CES, two major announcements were made. Obviously the 5600 XT and the 2060 KO, which is an RTX card, non-super, KO and KO Ultra from EVGA. The KO name was a name they used back in the 9000 series and prior to that where it was kind of like now they call things like SC or super clock and all that. KO was the same kind of thing. It was extra boost clocks and that was kind of it. So it's an ultra stripped down version of a 2060, a standard 2060. So it's interesting because the $299 price point in this card made it extremely relevant to the $279 price point of the 5600 XT, because depending on the SKU you go with, you might hit $300 or more dollars. The Power Color Red Dragon card that we have right here is a dual BIOS backplate custom PCB, which by the way, they're all pretty much gonna be custom PCBs. There's not like a reference design floating around out there for the retail. It's all AIB controlled with AMD obviously supplying the cores and all that sort of stuff. We'll start with the price discussion here first. The 1660 Strix, the TI Strix, is a $304 card on Newegg right now. That makes this card $20 more or $25 more than the MSRP of a 5600 XT. The $299 2060 is obviously $5 cheaper than the 1660 Ti, which you know this card is gonna be faster than this card in every single way, even though it's a very bare bones basic cooler that looks like they stole right off their 1660, to be honest, with a backplate. So that makes this card irrelevant. But you're gonna see this card in our testing because it's one of the fastest 1660 Ti's that we had. And obviously it's relevant because the price point overlaps. So we're kind of showing you the best 1660 Ti versus not the best 5600 XT experience you're gonna have, because there is the Red Dragon, or the Red Devil, which is a triple cooler card, and there's other SKUs out there that are higher than this one. So this is more of a closer to MSRP card, and then the cheapest 2060 on the market. But it all changed at the last minute, as is normal with AMD reviews, where typically it's, oh, by the way, guys, there's a new driver, which is something we're really used to. But you know what we got to deal with on this one? By the way, there's a new BIOS. And the bombshell of this card coming out, which was clearly a collaborative effort between EVGA and NVIDIA. NVIDIA had to have approved this design at this price point because MSRP and all that sort of stuff. So NVIDIA had to be involved in the price point of this card, which was nothing more than an attempt to steal sales from the 5600 XT to the 2060. That's business. There's nothing weird about that. There's nothing unethical about it. It's competition. It's what we've wanted. If it gives us a faster card at a cheaper price point, we are winning. And I'm going lower right now because my stool is. But what happened is at CES, we started seeing that all the performance figures versus the 2060 and the 1660 Ti that were taking place with the 5600 XT in AMD slides was now gonna not be nearly as relevant, because they had paired these two up, 5600 XT versus 1660 Ti, and the 2060 non-super was always intended to compete with like the 5700, and then the 2060 Super was like the custom 5700s, and then 5700 XT was to compete with the 2070 and 2070 Super. So it all kind of changed because suddenly that's a more appropriate pairing when it comes to performance. Now, I'm gonna caveat this with one thing. There is only one SKU on the market that has that price point of $299. And trying to find it right now would probably be like a needle in a haystack, because a $300 2060 is a hell of a bargain, a price to performance bargain. In fact, right now while we're editing this video, we decided to kind of see what's going on with the pricing, because it's been a while since this card was announced and became available, and big surprise, it is currently sold out on Newegg as well as EVGA's own website, and some knucklehead up here is actually trying to sell one for $380 some odd, making the $319 KO Ultra the cheapest card you can currently get, making my fears exactly come to truth or to fruition, which is this is kind of just a paper marketing thing. But number two, AMD responded by coming out with a performance increase BIOS, which raised power targets, it raised memory speed, it raised clock speed, and it raised overall power draw of the 5600 XT to answer this. So did it pay off? Well, here's our benchmarks. All right, so as you can see, the 5600 XT version that we have here from PowerColor. Now, I would highly recommend you guys watch more than my review, obviously, because other reviewers got different samples, different SKUs, different brands, different BIOS, different boost tables. Although AMD is really like putting a noose around the performance that you can do with these cards for obvious reasons. They don't want to step on the performance of a 5700 because you're starting to get pretty close to the performance of that for a lot less, which would make, well, the 5700 maybe less enticing to people than this card. It has to fit in between there and still compete with now this new 2060. So you can see by looking at the performance difference between the original BIOS, which by the way, they were like, don't even test it, don't even bother. Who cares about that one? Just do the new one. Obviously we're gonna test it. We wanna see what the changes were. We're not just gonna be like, okay, yep, we'll just do it the way you say to in AMD. So I had some conversations with some anonymous people, but I don't wanna get anyone in trouble, but I can say that some of the coolers are gonna be up to the new power draw and the new heat load that's gonna be happening with the higher power limit, which is up to 30 watts more than what it originally shipped with. This particular cooler, at least, is the exact same cooler that's found on the 5700 Red Dragon. So there's no heat pipes removed. It's not like it looks the same, but it's all different inside. It is literally a takeoff from the bigger brother card with more die and a hotter chip put on here. So this had no problems handling the extra temperature. In fact, we saw only about a 10-degree delta between edge temp and junction temperature of like 60 and 70. And then the hottest title, we saw 70 and 80. So it did a really good job. And that was with the fan curve that I was manually controlling, and I'll explain why in a second. That may not be the case for all the SKUs out there. If you've got a version that's trying to stay very close to MSRP and is putting a basic cooler on there, maybe only one or two, or no one has only one heat pipe, but maybe 2 or 3 heat pipes versus like the 5 that are on here, you might find that the temperatures creep up. Now I'm sure the AIBs are also increasing their fan curves to go along with the additional power draw and power limit to kind of keep up with that. We all know the fan curves set from the factory are extremely conservative. They err on the side of acoustics rather than performance. So we know that most of the time the fans are gonna have a lot more headroom where it'll be a little louder, but will still stay plenty cool. And as you can see at the $299 versus $289 price point, the 2060 might look like a better deal at $299 than the 5600 XT because it was edging this card out in just about every test. A couple of them, they really traded blows. Some, like the 2060, really pulled ahead. And Hitman was a title we used to show on all of our benchmarks because it was an AMD title. It favored AMD, so we could see how an NVIDIA card would perform on there and vice versa. But we got some really strange, and I mean strange, things happening with this card on Hitman to where I was getting extremely inconsistent readings. I would get 140 average one test, and then the next test get 120, and then the next one get 136. So it was all over the place. Unfortunately, I had to throw it out. I think obviously the 1660 Ti in a premium package like this is just now completely irrelevant if you've got these two cards that occupy that price point. But it doesn't end there because, like I said, try finding a $299 2060 in stock somewhere. And the fact that only one SKU is at this price point. If you really want to bring competition, you lower all the SKUs across the board. You really do. You make them all an MSRP of $300 and then custom AIB boards being somewhere around 320 or whatever, which is like what the KO Ultra is. Because what you're gonna find is the median price is really more like $335 to $340 for 2060s, not a $299 price point, which makes then the 5600 XT obviously the value because it's very close to the performance of a 2060 at nearly $50 less. And that's significant. When it comes to our experiences with this though, like I said, we did both BIOS because I wanted to see what the improvement was and I wanted to see what the temperatures were, the power draw was, and all of that prior to changing the BIOS. So temperatures came up about 5 to 10 C. I was seeing anywhere as low as 50 C on the edge temp and 60 C on the junction prior to the BIOS change with a consistent fan curve. I wanted to see how much locked at, let's say 40% fan speed, what locked at 40% would do after the change. It was about 10 C. The problem I had with this card, the fans didn't turn on their own. For whatever reason, these fans failed to turn on. If I went into Afterburner, I could control the fans. But if I just let AMD's Radeon software do its thing, the card would melt down. It would literally melt itself. I finally would stop at about 100 C of it climbing where I would just, okay, stop the test, turn on the fans manually and watch it cool down. And then the fan RPM reading was what, 36,005, whatever, 65,536, which is Phil was saying, because that's the highest bit, blah, 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 whatever that it could read. But I'm hoping that the cards are gonna be up to the task, because my big concern with this is that by suddenly increasing all of the limits on something that was clearly designed within a certain spec range is now just been pushed another 10% or more. As long as it all stays within spec of the VRMs and the power delivery and the core design and it doesn't hurt anything, then I can tell you right now, then they should have had this BIOS all along. The other thing is, if suddenly NVIDIA is able to reduce the price point of the 2060 down to $299 when competition takes place, and that means obviously you're being kind of overcharged for this all along. It's one of those things where at least we're seeing some competition taking place at a price point I think most people buy at around the $300 price point. $300 is kind of, I think that's in the upper tier of where a lot of people tend to spend, the average consumer. Of course, you have your diehards like me, which have always shopped like 80 series cards and higher, 70 series and all that. But $300 is you're getting a hell of a card now for $300. Okay, Jay, so which card should I buy? The 5600 XT or the RTX 2060? Well, that's gonna depend on a couple things, honestly. Can you even get your hands on a 2060 KO at $299? The 2060 gives you a more consistent experience. The drivers are much more frequent with NVIDIA. The drivers are solid. We rarely have driver problems with NVIDIA. AMD though, I gotta tell you, this is the first time I've done a review with AMD where I didn't have weird funky drivers that were being updated 4 times during the press release cycle where we had to do all of our testing all over again. It is the first time I ever had a BIOS update though. That meant I had to do testing all over again. The first cards out there on shelves are not gonna have the updated BIOS. You're gonna get the lesser performance that we showed. You're gonna have to go to AMD's website and they're gonna have to do the best they can to make sure they can handhold everyone along the way of flashing their BIOS on this, which is very simple. It's just a Windows utility. You drag you click the ROM and it does it and you restart and you got the new BIOS. It's really stupid, foolproof. But that doesn't mean someone out there may not have some funky power failure in the middle of a BIOS flash, and if it's not a dual BIOS card like this, then it's bricked. So it's risky. My recommendation might be to wait until they announce that all the cards have been flashed, and then the one you buy you know is the newest one. 1660 Ti, there is no reason to buy this anywhere near this price point whatsoever. $305 is more expensive than both of these cards and the slowest. Now, one thing you do give up though with the 2060 KO is monitor outputs. You get 1 HDMI, 1 DVI, and 1 DisplayPort. Whereas the 5600 XT, at least the card we have, has a more traditional single HDMI with 3 DisplayPort. So if you're running a multi-monitor config, you might want to consider the 5600 XT because of its superior monitor output. Overclocking though is a whole different story. So stay tuned for our overclocking video though, where we talk about the power limited 2060 KO, which is really what holds this card back because you get no extra power limit, versus the additional power limit they gave you on the BIOS plus the additional 20% power limit you can get on this card, which changes a lot of things. So guys, watch more of the reviews. This is one experience we had on a card that is giving us some weirdness, but a really good idea of what the performance is gonna be like. We all got different cards and different vendors, and they're gonna paint a bigger picture. So don't just go, Jay said, go out there and watch Kyle, watch Paul, watch Steve, watch Linus, whoever does these reviews. I don't know if Linus even does GP reviews anymore. I think he's like, yeah, I'm better than
GPU reviews.
So however he sounds. So whatever, I love Linus, that's besides the point. So, I don't know, I can't even do his voice. My voice does not go high enough, so you do it.
This video brought to you by
FreshBuck.
FreshBuck.
All right, guys, watch more reviews, get a better idea of how this card performs, and you'll see some more about this in the future. It's big news. It's just, I hope they don't catch fire with all the additional, they're turning to 11, guys. All right, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.